For Public Affairs Research and MTV, I'm Chris Woodward.
Halloween is one of the most anticipated nights of the year for kids. It can also be one of the most dangerous. Jeff Manasso explains.
Safe Kids Worldwide reports that on average, children amped up on sugar, excited, and distracted are more than twice as likely to be hit by a car on Halloween than on any other night of the year.
First, really basic. Drive scary slow.
Chevy Safety's Tricia Morrow says limit phones and other distractions, wear seatbelts, and use safety tech when available, and that masks and driving don't mix.
So if you have a mask as part of your costume, just take it off while you're driving, really making sure that you can focus on the road.
Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
South Dakota is getting ready for its first execution in 6 years.
A man who killed a South Dakota prison guard during a failed 2011 escape is facing a Monday execution in what would be that state's fourth lethal injection since reinstating the death penalty back in the late 1970s. Rodney Burgett set to die Monday afternoon for the slaying of Ronald R.J. Johnson. Burgett and a fellow inmate beat Johnson with a pipe and covered his head in plastic wrap. That inmate was executed in October of 2012. South Dakota's last execution took place later that month. Johnson's family plans to attend the execution. Paul Stevens, Fox News.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Hi, I'm Anthony. I had goals and passions. I wanted to be an architect when I grew up, but my addiction really stole everything. I came to Teen Challenge with $1.75 in my pocket. I feel like I'm not even a person who I was. My life got transformed.
If you know an adult or teenager who's struggling with a chemical addiction, Teen Challenge can help. Call us today at 417-581-2181 or reach us online at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hate does not know religion, race, creed, political party. It's not a political issue in any way, shape, or form. It wasn't just an attack upon the Jewish community. This was an attack upon America.
They've been going since October 13th. There's a lot of coughing here. They've got blisters on their feet. It's been tough, but they say that they're not accepting Mexico's offer for temporary asylum, temporary jobs, temporary health care, and they're definitely not heeding President Trump's warnings to not show up at the border. They all say they're coming, and they're going to show up on the border.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Yeah, that's right. Happy Monday to you. Welcome to the program here on American Family Radio at Urban Family Talk. It's great to be with you. All across the country, it's Monday, and I hope your day has started off just awesome. It's really jam-packed news day. I'm coming off of the heels of listening to Sarah Sanders throw down from behind the podium at a live press briefing that she had today. But I want to launch right into something that I think is super important in times like these, on a day like today, after the weekend we've had. And I have a lot of news and information for you. We're going to welcome Amber Athey, media and breaking news reporter for the Daily Caller. She's going to be on the program today to talk to us about Ebony Magazine ignoring black women running for office. But right now, therefore, we will not fear. Though the earth should change and though the mountains slip into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains quake at its swelling pride, you know what's coming next. Psalm 46, 1-3. The Lord is our refuge. The Lord is our high tower. He is our strength. Psalm 91:6 says, I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God. In him will I trust. Why are we talking about God being our refuge and fortress? Well, actually, I thought that would be the theme for this week for our daily confessions. And I kind of was batting that around a little bit and really loving the idea of going from who God says we are to, because he never says bad things about us, to who he is. And then we had this weekend, which it's just been one story after another of deranged individuals with evil in their hearts going out and doing things that most of us find appalling and horrifying. But there's a reason for everything under the sun. And none of these things surprise God. God is not on the throne sitting up there surprised that evil men would take it upon themselves to kill in a synagogue or to mail, real or faux bombs to political types. None of these things shock God. But what we can count on is that he is our fortress. He is our high tower. He is our strength, our ever-present help in time of danger. He has raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David. And he is our strength and our song. He has become our salvation. He is my God, and I will praise him, my Father's God. I will exalt him. Even in these really, it's a sad, and it's the time where we have to go to the Lord in prayer and especially intercede on behalf of those good people who were just attending services in a synagogue when the gunman came in and spent 20 minutes shooting 11 people and injuring many more. And we know that God is able to do above all that we dare ask or think according to the power that works in us. And we are grateful for that. For who is God besides the Lord? And who is the rock except our God? I want us to meditate on that. That's why it's today's daily confession, that God is our refuge and our strength. And we have to meditate on that, especially in times like these. And I'm going to be bringing you some audio, hopefully the actual person, David Barton of Wall Builders. So last week was like a whirlybird of pastors, appreciation, prayer luncheons, and things like that, where I was able to attend as a member of the media. And on one of the events on Friday, I was actually able to attend as a person, as the MC. And then Saturday, I spoke at St. Louis University to the Students for Life workshop event that they had there. And it was just a really great time to meet with these high school students and college students who were gathered together for a day-long workshop to strategize the pro-life movement. And so we're going to cover that a little bit on the show today, how this is the most pro-life generation. Studies showing that these kids are actually the highest percentage of them that think, millennials, that think that abortion is a sin. And when we get into that conversation, we're also going to talk about, I went last night with a good friend of mine, dear friend, actually my chicken marsala friend from last week. You guys remember she had me over for lunch and fed me chicken marsala. Yeah, that friend. So we went to the movies last night and we saw Gosnell. And the movie was, I mean, it was horrifying, but it was also so well done that I was able to sit through it. And, you know, you might be thinking, well, of course you were able to sit through it. You watched all the videos from David Daleiden and you know, yeah, but that doesn't mean that I actually wanted to go on a weekend and watch a movie like that. But it's well done. It's done like an episode of CSI or an episode of Law and Order. And so there are horrifying moments, but it's also extraordinarily informative. And it's a great example for you to see on the screen of courage, real courage, where when told that this could jeopardize your career, when told that this could be something that prevents you from going, you know, places you might want to go with your career, or it might make you a pariah in your profession, individuals who heard that and were attacked personally in public went forward anyway because they believed that what he was doing there was illegal and barbaric and had to be stopped. Not just because it was in spite of their own personal beliefs. And that's what makes the story so interesting. So I encourage you, it's still in theaters. Don't be told that it's sold out at your theater. There've been all kinds of shenanigans surrounding the film. It's so popular that all of the previews before the film were for big new releases that are coming out shortly within the next 12 months. The biggest blockbuster films that they're counting on making the most money on were promoted before Gosnell came, you know, before the commencement of the film. And my friend and I were just like marveling over that because, you know, if a film is like what we call a B film or it's about to leave the theater, they'll often not put the best promos they have in front of it because they don't think anybody's in the seats to see it. So it's a masterfully well done movie. I encourage you not to give in to that spirit that says to you, you know what, news is bad enough. I don't need to see this. I read about it in the newspaper. We all read about the story in online media. We all saw the videos and you know, testimonials of people who'd been involved in the story. We all saw all of it. We were all tip of the spear on that. I'm talking to my audience here now, people who are well informed. But this is different. This is you seeing how a Republican governor was complicit in allowing Gosnell to do what he did. A Republican governor. And so I don't want to spoil it for you, but you've got to go see the film if you haven't seen it. The other thing that was so amazing about seeing it up on the screen, because I'm supposed to be covering this later, but I'm into it now. The other thing was seeing so many people that I know, Scotty Nell Hughes, Alfonso Rochelle, Dean Cain, and seeing in the credits other people, Nick Searcy, good friend, Nick Searcy, all of this work done by people that I know, Anne Morell, it's well done. And the acting it's not like, how sometimes you check a movie out at the library or something and something you've never seen, and then 10 minutes in, you're like, oh, I know, I never saw this. This movie's horribly done. It's not even, it looks like it was shot in somebody's backyard. It's not like that. It's a professionally produced Hollywood quality film made by conservatives, and they deserve your eyeballs. So check it out before it leaves the theaters. I actually think it'll be there for a little while longer because it's been so immensely popular. A note on the audience who was sitting in the room with us, there were some older people there. There were some teenage boys there who came as a group to watch it. And there was a black couple with a small child who fell asleep probably a quarter of the way through the movie. And then just a lot of other, what looked like regular people. And the theater was pretty full. It was the smaller theater inside the one that we went to, but it was definitely well attended. And I just think it's worth your time to go see. So consider doing that. So we have a little bit more time here where I want to talk about what we're going to be sharing with you in bits and bobs over the next few weeks. Until November 11th, we have this fantastic National Collection Week, which is almost here for Operation Christmas Child. So Operation Christmas Child has delivered and collected gift-filled shoeboxes to more than 157 million children since the project began in 1993. Now, you might do this through your church, and so if so, God bless. But if you don't have an opportunity to be involved with Operation Christmas Child, we would love for you to do it with us here at AFA and American Family Radio. So what you can do is share the good news and great joy of Jesus by packing gift-filled shoeboxes for children who are affected by war, poverty, disaster, famine, and disease around the world. And this is a project of Samaritan's Purse. And so you can get packing. National Collection Week is November 12th through 19th. You can drop off your shoebox at one of nearly 5,000 collection sites. There are 5,000 collection sites, so there is one near you. And this is so easy and fun to do. And if you have kids in your life, kids love to help with this. You go buy the items. It's a $9 per shoebox gift donation online. And you can also follow your box and receive a QR code to find out what city and country the child that received your gift is actually located in. And the hope this year is to collect enough gifts for 11 million children this year. 11 million kids is almost twice the population of, we're at 5.8. Yeah, it's just a little under the population, twice the population of the entire state of Missouri. That's a lot of kids. And I would love to we need you to do it. So definitely go to SamaritansPurse.org/OCC and get started there. And it'll be it's a great opportunity for us to partner together to change the lives of some really great kids at Christmas time. So additionally on the show today, I have some audio of this guy who admits that he's an attempted murderer and he's in the caravan and he's on his way to the United States. And I wanted to give you updates if you're just kind of cranking back up after a weekend away from news and politics. There was last week, I reported 800 troops were going to go to the southern border to supplement the National Guard troops from around the country, from different states who have been dispatched. And remember, we already have a substantial force of individuals who are employed by Immigrations and Customs and Border Patrol who already work on our southern border. Well, it turns out that 800 troops has now been upped to 5,000. And I saw additional media, which I didn't pull for today, of Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen kind of cleaning up her comments from last week. Remember, I was a little miffed last week that she said we're going to send our troops down there and they're going to be unarmed. And, it just made it sound like they were going down for, tea and crumpets. And that's not what our troops are there for. Well, it turns out they actually do have plans. They're mobilizing equipment that's been sent down there. They're still in the process of getting that down there. And they're also, with 5,000 troops, going to be a much stronger presence in case they actually have to close the border all the way, like shut it down, no crossings whatsoever, which is interesting to me because I'm wondering how, I guess the additional troops will be the ones to seal up the portions of the border that are porous, that are currently unmonitored. What are they going to do? Maybe some of the equipment they've sent down include drones. I can tell you it's a public relations nightmare for the president because our media is arrayed against him, and they'll go down there and they'll lay in wait and find small kids and take pictures of small kids crying while a Border Patrol agent is telling their parents to turn around or telling the mother you have to go back, and people will be screaming and crying and laying on the ground, and people will be acting as if our troops are doing things to them. And there seems to be, looking around in the natural, no way that the president can win on this. And it's his signature issue. But there is a way he can win. If we win this in prayer, on our knees, asking the Father to give him the solutions and give him the cooperation of those who have been placed under his authority, and that this would be resolved in a way that glorifies God but still maintains our national sovereignty. And that is, those two things are not mutually exclusive. They can happen. And so I'm not only hopeful, I am right now here, I'm acknowledging that that is not only possible, but that God can absolutely use this to further his aims at the southern border of our country, which is that we would not be facilitators of human trafficking and that our border would be sealed. So that's what we have to pray for. And that's what I'd like to do right now. We're about to go out into the break. And so I just want to go to the Father and ask him for his special hand of blessing and anointing on this situation. Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for the chance to rely on you in prayer. I thank you for being my Father and knowing everything that I need. And as an American, I pray for our president. I pray for his guidance, and I pray for strength and wisdom, and that everyone who is in his chain of command would follow his orders directly, and that you would protect our troops and our Border Patrol men and women, and that you would resolve this issue at our southern border. I pray all these things in the matchless name of Jesus Christ. Amen. We'll be back with more right after this music. Stay there.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. You know, the very first day in Israel, when we're staying in Jerusalem, we go to the Mount of Olives. And it's there at the Mount of Olives we look out over the old city of Jerusalem. It's a spectacular sight. You've seen it in pictures before, but it's another thing to actually be there as we walk down from the Mount of Olives to the Garden of Gethsemane, and we pray there. It's going to be a wonderful time with brothers and sisters from around the country visiting the Holy Land, the land of Jesus. If you want information on this March 14th through the 22nd tour, just call us and we'll send you a brochure. Call 1-800-FAMILIES, F-A-M-I-L-I-E-S, option 5, and leave us your name and your address and we'll mail you a brochure. Or if you want to simply go online at twholyland.com, everything's there. twholyland.com.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. During our parenting years, one of the values Karen and I had was raising our kids to take care of themselves, to be self-sufficient. We encouraged them to be responsible, to work, and to use their money wisely. We knew that one day they'd be on their own and have to know how to take care of themselves. Today, it does our hearts good to see them embracing responsibility and handling their affairs. It's good to stand on your own 2 feet, isn't it? But on the other hand, don't kid yourself. Self-sufficiency is really a relative expression. We might be self-sufficient compared to other people, but the bottom line is this: none of us is really self-sufficient. We need others and we need God. Only God is completely self-sufficient. He needs no one or nothing else. I'm drawn to this verse in Job chapter 41, verse 11, where God describes himself. Who has given to me that I should repay him? Whatever is under the whole heaven is mine. Think about that. God says, what? Do you think I have need? Who do I need to go to ask for something? Whose door do I need to knock on? Or what banker do I need to see? What farmer do I need to visit? God says, I need nothing. I am self-sufficient. He says, I'm obligated to no one. Who has given to me that I should repay him? Here's what I want you to remember today. No matter how resourceful and independent we are, we will always need others, and we'll never outgrow our need to depend on God.
Crawford Loritz is senior pastor of Fellowship Bible Church in suburban Atlanta, Georgia. For more information, go to livingalegacy.org. livingalegacy.org. Legacy Moment with Crawford Loritz is produced by Moody Radio, ministry of Moody Global Ministries.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for being here today. I'm really excited about speaking to our next guest, Amber. Her name's Amber Athey. She's a media and breaking news reporter for the Daily Caller, one of our favorite news orgs. And we're going to talk about Ebony Magazine and this penchant they have for ignoring black women if they happen to be on the political right. Amber, thank you so much.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Okay, so let's dive in. Why? I don't understand why they can't even mention. Like, does it actually physically hurt if you're in the media and you, I don't know, say, just acknowledge the fact that some women who are black are running on the Republican side? Does it actually physically hurt?
Yeah, apparently it does. Ebony ran this piece saying, meet the 18 black women who are running for Congress, was suggested that the list was exhaustive. However, when you read through the story, you realize that every single person that they listed was a Democrat. And there are currently 6 black Republican women running for office, including Mia Love, who, of course, is an incumbent running for re-election in Utah. Mm-hmm. So as I read through the piece, I was kind of shocked that they chose to just leave out 6 black women. And it seems like these liberal women's magazines are all for inclusion and intersectionality until they're not, until the woman that we're talking about is a conservative or a Republican, and then all of a sudden they apparently deserve to be erased from history.
And so, Amber, I want to point out that another thing that is really striking specifically about Mia Love is that coming from Utah, which doesn't have a huge population of black Americans, and I'm not complaining about that, I'm just, speaking from what census data tells us, Mia Love is elected by primarily a white electorate that decides on its own, without any force or coercion, to send her to Congress on their behalf. So it's really one of those statements about Barack Obama talked a lot about these white states and minority states with small populations and rural voters, people who'd never interacted with black people, people who deserve to have an influx of immigrants come into their town and teach them about diversity, and people who didn't believe in, equal protection under law. He really was nasty to people who live in states like Utah. But Utah sends Mia Love to Congress. This isn't her first rodeo. She's incumbent. She's trying to go back. What does that say about the narrative that the left continually foists upon us, that white Americans are just so racist and they just never met a black person they liked?
Yeah, I think what it says is that this narrative is bunk, and the reality is that when voters are looking for someone to put into office, they're looking for someone who's qualified. They're looking for someone who represents the policies that they support. And race, religion, and creed and all of that doesn't really matter. They want someone who represents them in the way that they want their government to work and to support policies that are going to help them. And this idea that someone's color has anything to do with policies that they support is just ridiculous. And in terms of women's magazines, this is not the first time that they've done this. Cosmopolitan recently highlighted women who are running for office, and again left out a vast majority of the Republican women who are running. First Lady Melania Trump has not been on the cover of a fashion magazine since Trump took office. Of course, Michelle Obama was on something like half a dozen of them. So this decision, this effort to keep conservative women out of fashion magazines, out of women's literature, I think is just sickening.
It is, and I think it's especially sickening when, Melania Trump, before her husband's political aspirations were, came to full bear, she was regularly lauded as one of the most fashionable women in the country, and she was once a supermodel. So her fashion sense hasn't changed at all, and I think, I would dare say some of her outfits that she's worn abroad for some of these meetings, like her walking across the cobblestone courtyard in England in that yellow outfit. It was a gown with I don't know if the cape was built in, but the cape, she looked like she was actually the royalty there. And it was a stunning photograph. I mean, it was one of those dreams for magazine editors who are looking for something pictorially rich and gorgeous that could make a splash in a magazine, and really the keeper magazine, the one you never recycle, the one you keep it forever and show it to your grandkids. And they didn't even note that she made that fashion choice, which traditionally it's the Queen of England who wears these super bright colors, because she always wants her subjects to be able to say that they saw her, even if it's the corner of her hat or the corner of her coat, they can say that they actually saw her. And Melania Trump, in a nod to her, wears this, it's like goldenrod yellow, floor length. She's almost 6 feet tall. She's in heels. She's got also the cape, or whatever the formal name of that thing was. And it was just, I mean, and it's not the only time she's been really fashion forward since she's been the First Lady. I want to just list I want to give the list of the other women, because we talked about Congresswoman Mia Love. She's running for re-election in Utah's 4th. Aja Smith is running for California's 41st congressional district. So that's a hugely momentous occasion to have a black woman running in, hardcore liberal California. Virginia Fuller running for Florida's 5th. Liz Mattery running in Maryland's 2nd congressional district. Janae Butler running in New York's 13th. And Charlotte Bergman running in Tennessee's 9th congressional district. These are all momentous districts that could be wonderful for either party to take, and these women just happen to be of the permanent tan like me.
Yeah, exactly. And Charlotte Bergman is actually someone who has ties to Hollywood, which is, it's already, I guess, somewhat rare for there to be a black Republican woman running for office, but then to also have someone who has ties to Hollywood, you obviously expect Hollywood to be more liberal, and they tend to shun people who come out as conservative. Stacey Dash is a great example of that. She, of course, played Dion in the hit movie Clueless, and she came out as Republican a few years ago and said she lost all of her friends in Hollywood because of it. There's this orthodoxy on the left that if you're in the arts and entertainment industry, if you're not liberal, then you don't have a heart. And they all gal pal around at these Planned Parenthood fundraisers, and they go to liberal charity events together. And anyone who dares to not toe that line is shunned. Look at Kanye West. He visited the White House with a MAGA hat on, and now cable news is mocking him as being mentally ill and trying to diagnose him from the cable news anchor chair, when none of these people have psychology or psychiatric degrees. It's just really crazy how everyone has to be tied to their identity, to their race, and they can't, or their gender, and they can't be anything different than what liberals say, and yet somehow conservatives are the ones who are trying to box people in.
And also totally racist. Don't forget that, Amber. I mean, you know, if you're a Republican, if you're black, you hate yourself if you're a Republican. And if you're white, you are not only just a regular dyed-in-the-wool racist, like a regular run-of-the-mill one. You're someone who your whole family's racist, your kids are racist, any babies you might have are racist, and you need to have everything that you own taken from you and redistributed to people who you don't know. And obviously, because you support Donald Trump, you're also deplorable and, any other negative adjective that can be leveled against you. I guess for me, it's much more basic than the rudimentary trolldom that seems to dominate the media right now. Amber, does it just hurt to acknowledge these women are there? I mean, what I'm saying is just to list them, even if your profile isn't puffy, just to admit that they're running and that they're black, or I guess it's because they're not black because they're running on the right.
I think that's part of it. I think Ebony would very much like to consider these people to be traitors to their race. But more than that, I think they didn't mention them because perhaps they're scared. I think they're scared that if they admit to their readers that there are 6 black female Republicans running for office, then, hey, maybe there's something to this conservatism thing, and maybe we should check it out. That's the last thing they want, is their readers discovering that conservatism in many ways actually helps women. And, as a woman myself who's conservative, I've been called a traitor to my gender so many times. I recently gave a speech at American University talking about due process and how we shouldn't automatically believe all women who have sexual assault claims. And I had liberal men lecturing me about how I was a bad woman for saying that. So the left loves to tell other people what they're allowed to think just based solely on immutable characteristics.
Okay, so I'm going to say that the fact that they left the Republican women out, you made a good point there, Amber, that there may be something to this whole conservative thing. The fact that they left them out is an acknowledgement that there's something to conservatism. There's something interesting about it. There's something that might convince you or entice you or even look interesting, something. There's something to it because they feel like they have to hide it in order to win against it. They can't win against conservatism with their own ideas or policies or successes.
Right, and if you read the profile on Ebony Magazine, they didn't even mention the fact that all of the women that they listed were Democrats. It was basically just assumed. And if you read the profile of each person, it didn't say specifically in there what policies they wanted to promote. And so there was this assumption that every Black woman who runs for office has to be a Democrat. And I think that their readers, one, they should be charitable enough to their readers to let them know that there are Republican women running for Congress and that they should be allowed to explore those ideas. And if they don't like them, then they can challenge them with their own ideas. But ignoring them entirely tells me that they're worried that their readers are not going to be able to decide for themselves what the best policies for them are. It's actually very infantilizing.
It's like, well, if we let you know that these Black women are running, then you'll know that you don't have to run for Congress as a Democrat. And we don't want you finding that out. Like, it's that.
Right.
I mean, wow. So just tell me, have you ever seen a Republican get away with down talking or that kind of behavior towards any minority group? So white women, Black women and men, Asian men and women, any group that's a, listed group that a Republican could say, well, because you don't really understand these concepts anyway, so you need the Republicans to explain to you, or something of that nature. I've never seen that fly on the right.
No, and that would never fly, because whenever President Donald Trump says something somewhat critical or negative to a female reporter, even though he does that to all reporters, all of a sudden the narrative and the chyron on CNN is that Trump has a problem with female reporters. You would never see that same thing be criticized by from someone on the left. They can basically talk to people however they want. But as soon as Trump criticizes a woman, even though, give me a break. President Donald Trump calls Jim Acosta fake news to his face. He's constantly battling with reporters from CNN and MSNBC. To suggest that he has a problem with just women is simply not accurate. He has a problem with all journalists in general. But it's an easy way for the left to paint him as sexist if they suggest that he's being condescending to women.
When the reality is that most of the media reporters who question him, they come at him with an attitude like, well, here's my chance to smash your face in the dirt and get on CNN later on tonight. And it just defies all logic that you wouldn't be able to see that if you're in his place. So it's not as if President Trump is completely oblivious to when he's being spoken down to himself, or when he's being asked a question that's a setup to make him look like he hates different groups or is just plain evil. And so when he strikes back, it's almost as if they're saying on the left, women aren't equal to men. They can't handle the same treatment that men get from President Trump. And I believe he treats the women the same way as the men, because he does believe women are equal and that they can handle it.
Definitely, and that's a great point, that the media is suggesting that women are unable to take criticism from the president at the same level as men. That's actually more sexist than talking to women reporters the same way that he talks to male reporters. And you brought up a great point about how the president can recognize the questioning from the media as being biased. After this synagogue shooting and the pipe bomb incident this past week, the president was immediately blamed by cable news outlets for inciting these incidences with his rhetoric. And then the media got upset when he suggested that the media was responding in a divisive manner by trying to blame him. So there's this disconnect between the media where they're constantly attacking the president, but as soon as they get the smallest iota of response back, then all of a sudden Trump is the instigator, Trump is the attacker.
Well, I don't think he looked bad at all. I mean, he'd maybe look bad if you're a triggered snowflake, but if you're someone who really believes that women can take tough questions, they can take tough answers, if you really believe that women reporters are equal to male reporters, then you know that people who are tough with the male reporters will be tough with the women, and the women will welcome it because it means they're a part of the greater collegial group, that they're a part of the press corps. I want to say thanks for your work. Thank you for pointing this out, for doing the heavy lifting for Ebony Magazine of making the list. I tweeted them during the show and told them that you did their job for them. And hopefully lots of people will retweet it and make them feel really, really, really silly for leaving all of the Black Republican women off the list.
Well, thanks for having me, Stacey, and I appreciate that.
All right. Hope to talk to you again soon. Have a great week.
You too.
So Amber Athey over at the Daily Caller, regularly doing the work that other media folks won't do. Head over to Twitter. I'm Stacey on the Right on Twitter. Retweet that. And let's see if Ebony Magazine can at least acknowledge, maybe just on Twitter, that they might have printed the story before they had the entire thing completed. And I also posted the story on Facebook that Amber wrote for the Daily Caller, and you can check that out. It's at the Stacey on the Right Show Facebook page, and you can click there. You can also see all the old live streams and any other cool stuff. I put a lot of stories up over there, and some of the ones that I cover on the show, I put those up there too. And the reason I do that is because sometimes you're wanting to kind of go back and say, okay, she said X, but I need verification on that, or where did she find that? I try to put those up on the Facebook page so you can find them and click through and read them for yourself. And a lot of people share those with me in DMs on Facebook, and I'm really grateful for that. But, you know, it's there for you to check out. So it's important to note that if Ebony Magazine had taken the time to include the Republican women, Amber Athey wouldn't have had to write the story about this, and they wouldn't have to be sitting up there with egg on their faces. And I do believe they have egg on their faces. They might not think so, but we all know how that is. A fool says in his heart there is no God doesn't mean there's no God. It just means the one guy's a fool, right? All right. We'll be back with more right after this.
One of the first steps to becoming a Christian is recognizing our sinful nature. What makes this so difficult is that we have selective vision when it comes to our own issues. It's easy for me to see your faults, but when it comes to seeing my own, then my eyesight automatically gets bad. One surefire way to measure new birth in Christ is by opened eyes and a clear vision. Sometimes we can pass between having sight and having no sight because we have fallen asleep to the needs around us, or our perspective on those things that are eternal is distorted. Whatever the case, there is nothing more dangerous than having blurred vision and still thinking that it's clear. Don't measure your vision by your own standards. It will be warped and distorted every time, but rather measure it by God's standards. God desires that our eyesight remains clear. So how is your eyesight today? With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Tony Johnson. Connect with us at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Hi, this is Steve Tiber with 8 Days of Hope. We've seen God open up so many doors for us to help serve and love those who get affected by a natural disaster.
As the trees and the wind started crashing down around us, my wife was, of course, very diligently praying, Lord, please be with us.
Very simply, we do it because God commands us to love others.
I see these volunteers all as a gift from God.
And I'm just grateful they're here, helping out. It's a blessing.
If you're interested in becoming a part of what God's doing through 8 Days of Hope, please go to 8daysofhope.com, click on Get Involved, submit your email address.
I've noticed that whenever there's a time in my life when things might be a little gloomy, the number one thing that I can do is to go serve somebody.
And I would encourage anyone else to, it's worth it. Come out and do it next time if you didn't make it to this one, and the Father will really bless you in it.
Thank you so much for your prayers and volunteering with 8 Days of Hope.
Securing America.
President Trump said he'd send the military to the border because of the migrant caravan from Central America, and the Defense Secretary has approved Homeland Security's request to come up with a plan to send troops. Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen detailed what they need.
We have asked for engineering support, logistics support. Engineering support, of course, it would include vehicle barriers, pedestrian barriers. So we make that request to the Department of Defense.
While the president has said the caravan will not be allowed in, some may claim asylum. and those will have to be considered. Nielsen says while many initial claims are considered credible,
at the end of that process, only 20% are determined by a judge to meet the United States statutory requirements for asylum.
She says Congress needs to change the approval process to get more people who need asylum in and weed out those more effectively who don't qualify ahead of time. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Are you willing to break the law to get back to the United States?
Yo quiero entrar y pedir un perdón.
He says he wants to apply for pardon for the felony he committed.
Can you ask him exactly what happened?
¿Cuál es tu felonía exactamente?
Number 3.
A third-degree felony?
Intento de matar.
Attempt of murder.
But not everybody has convictions. We spoke to another man here who said that he was deported about 10 years ago. He was in a roundup in a construction site, got deported. He waited 10 years to come out, but he is from Honduras as well, says he's just going to show up on the border in Tijuana, he thinks, and he's just going to plead his case and ask for asylum. I told him that the administration's not going to grant it to him, but he said he's got no choice. He's going to try anyway.
So, welcome back to the program. If you see this clip, I can double check and see if it's on here. I don't get every single the video for every single audio clip posted, but in the video, you've got this Fox News reporter and you have the interpreter, and then you have the guy who was convicted of attempted murder here in the U.S. and deported. And so he asks him what was the problem? Why were you deported? And he says, "Oh, I had a conviction which I plan to ask to be, forgiven for." And when he says third-degree felony, the reporter kind of looks like, "Well, what was it?" And the interpreter says, "What was it?" And he says attempted murder in Spanish. And I don't know if the Fox News reporter understood it, but his eyebrows kind of go up a little, and then she repeats it in English, and he just gets this blank look on his face like, "Are you kidding me?" Yeah, that's what's going on here. We have attempted murderers and people who will soon be committing murder mixed in with women and kids and people who want asylum. Now, again, I just heard in that audio clip that they're going to sort through the people to see who actually deserves asylum. None of them. If they pass a legitimate asylum application center and decide to storm the border, they do not deserve asylum. I want to make one more point, and you can file this away in your back pocket for the next time you hear some bleeding heart liberal who will never have an illegal immigrant or refugee in their community because their community has such a high cost of living that no one else can afford to live there except academics and people in the technology sector. Here's a bit of an issue. Remember, we've gone over this before. The reason why Syrians are not refugees when they come to America, no one from the Middle East is. The only people who can be legitimate refugees are people who are somehow bordering the country they seek refugee status in. Their country has to border that country. In order to be a refugee, you have to be leaving a war-torn situation in your homeland and going to one country that is adjacent to your own, sharing a border with your own. That is a refugee. So if you're coming from the Middle East to the United States, you're not a refugee, you're an economic migrant. You may be fleeing a war-torn country, but the country that you should be going to is probably Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Jordan, any one of the countries that's in the Middle East that borders your own. That is where you are supposed to go. Once you pass that first country that you border, you are now an economic migrant, seeking better situation than what the country that borders your own can provide to you. And what is especially telling about migrants coming from the Middle East is that they arrive here and immediately begin to judge American society when they passed up a whole bunch of other countries that practice their same religion and the people look like them and speak their language. They passed those countries up because they weren't good enough, only to arrive on American soil to start judging us good old Americans who are paying for them lock, stock, and barrel through our tax dollars. Oh yeah, you're sensing some attitude? I'm glad you can feel it. Here comes some more. When we're talking about people coming from Honduras or Guatemala, they're passing through other countries to get to America. So if you're bordering with Mexico, your place of refuge, if you are a refugee, is Mexico. If Mexico has offered you asylum and you say, nah, I think I'm going to carry on to America, you are no longer a refugee. You're no longer a political asylee. You are an economic migrant, which means no one in that caravan, because they've all been offered temporary shelter and jobs by Mexico, none of them qualify for refugee status. None of them qualify for, the asylum process where they're fleeing for their lives. Their lives have ceased to be in danger because they've passed through one or two different countries on their way to America. So please explain to me why I, as a taxpayer, should be prepared to increase my taxes and the work that I have to do per year to fund these economic migrants. Of course they want to live in America. Our welfare system promises them a bounty of $50,000 a year or so in benefits. Of course they want to live here. They don't show up for their asylum hearings. If they're told that their asylum claim has been rejected, they're not there at the hearing to find out anyway. They just disappear into the interior of the country and start receiving benefits. And then when the Democrats tell them, hey, we let you in here, that's who they vote for. So they can turn our country in the same kind of pit that they came from. Because if the Democrats are in charge for a sustained amount of time, that's what happens. The Democrats are currently running on a platform with which they can get back into office by taking control of the purse strings in Congress and undo all of the economic prosperity that Donald Trump has. He's just been fighting tooth and nail just to get what we have now. That's what they want. Because Democratic policies don't look awesome unless everyone's suffering and everyone has something that they can complain about. When people aren't complaining, when people are shopping and saving and spending and, finding recreational time to expand their knowledge base, reading books in their career field or looking at doing an apprenticeship or going back to school to get some training so that they can come up out of the current level of work they're in. You don't need Democrats. Democrats they're offering you government handouts. They're offering you a place at the table of government buffet benefits so that you can eat from there and get fat so you can't get up out of the chair. That's what that's about. So speaking specifically of these caravan folks, because I've heard people say, media types, they're like, well, if you call it a caravan, that has a negative connotation. Well, what else can it be? 10,000 people, 14,000 people, and another caravan behind them planning on coming to our border and demanding entry, whether or not we want them there. I want to go back to Disney. My husband and I had our honeymoon there, Disney, Florida. And we were there for I don't even know how many days we were there. And it was just the two of us. We were running around the park like kids, and we'd just gotten married. And it was just so much fun. But I don't exactly want to spend the money to go there now because it's so expensive. And I'd love to go there just me and my husband again. So what if me and 100 other Americans who want to go to Disney just showed up and demanded to be allowed to enter? You might say, well, that's not exactly the same thing. Well, it is. I do feel oppressed that I haven't been back to Disney for 6 or 7 years. And the last time we went was with the kids. And we didn't get to stay on the property. We stayed on the beach instead. I want to go stay on the property, and I don't want anyone to tell me I can't do it. Why can't I get, 99 of my friends? I have 99 friends, and my husband and I, and just go down there and walk up to the gate and say, there's 100 of us, and we're coming in. And we're staying on the property, and we don't care what you think about it. I guarantee you Disney wouldn't be for that. Neither would Facebook if we showed up at their campus 100 strong or even 1,000 strong. I have 5,000 friends on Facebook, another 70-some thousand on the Facebook page. Surely I could get a group of 5,000 together who want to go and, go on a tour that might turn into a few overnights at Facebook. They're all into open borders and stuff. I wonder if the Facebook, what do they call them? I know they're security guards. They probably have a special name at Facebook. Would they allow us to just come in because there's 1,000 of us? Just come in and spend the night, use all of Facebook's facilities, maybe let us into some of the secret rooms so we could see the algorithm at work. Wouldn't that be cool? Take us into the data center and let us see how they've set up their redundant networks. Well, I know a little bit about that. Yeah, my family members in IT. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see those spaces. Maybe into their research and development. What is to stop any of us from taking the same tack and saying, I want something, and I don't want to pay for it, and I don't want to follow the regular channels or rules. I just want it, and I want it now, and I'm going to go get it for myself. What's to stop any of us from doing that? Oh, I remember. I wouldn't be allowed to do that because I'm an American citizen, and I'm expected to follow the law. These people are not American citizens, and for some reason, A lot of Americans think that because their country is war-torn or has a lot of drug, interdiction problems that, well, they just have no choice. They have to come up here. They do have a choice. They do have a choice. The idea that we have some responsibility to them is really, it's an emotionally driven reaction. Just like you don't have any responsibility to me should I make a bunch of decisions that cause me to become indigent. America does not have a innate responsibility to care for every country in South America just because we're on the same landmass. We don't have to do it. And it's a mistake for people to run around thinking that. And when you hear, I'm going to roll some of my show prep up. When you hear people saying that we have a responsibility, let's side the head of the truth. You know how you get rolled up newspaper, smack them. They need to be informed that we have no responsibility to take care of people from other countries. We do a lot of it because we want to, but we have no responsibility to do it. And then ask them, oh, so you think we should allow 10 to 14,000 people to just storm the border and come in? Well, how many of them are you willing to take into your home? If they say, well, I don't have any room in my home, what about your community? How many of them could be relocated to your community? Most of the people who feel like these people should be allowed to enter live in communities that will never have a refugee in them. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying every community should have refugees in. I'm saying the people who have the least exposure are not the ones who should be making the decision about whether or not they should come in. Our laws should govern this, as do all other situations. And I tell you what, I'm still waiting on the day when a police officer or anyone will just, maybe even an email that says, okay, you got it. All these other rules, like you having to pay tax and all this other stuff, that's suspended for you. We're suspending that for people who look like you, sound like you, sit behind a red microphone, have a flag hanging behind the chair, whatever reason you feel like giving. If you're going to suspend the rules for everyone else from south of the border, when do Americans get a reprieve? I know I could find 70 or 80 or 100,000 people real quick who would sign up for a reprieve from paying taxes or a reprieve from paying all these stupid fees we have to pay. You buy a car, you got to pay all these millions of dollars in fees to register it. Or you buy a house and you owe all these fees to this one and that one. And some of it doesn't even make any sense. It's stuff they've made up. It's an administrative fee. What's it for? Well, it's for administrative things. What things? It's a fee we charge everyone. You have to pay it. You not heard that before? So in amongst this group of crazy coming from south of our border, you've got these MS-13 gang members. And just in case you're forgetting what happens when they get inside the country, there's a story over here. An illegal alien MS-13 member who entered the U.S. as an unaccompanied minor. So he was given the opportunity to be in our country because he came here as a kid. Well, he's been caught with a loaded gun in Boston. He's from El Salvador. Yippee. And he was arrested in May while carrying a loaded gun in Boston, Massachusetts. And yesterday in federal court, he pled guilty to one count of being an illegal alien in possession of firearms and ammunition. His name's Elmer Alfaro Hercules. He's now 20. He was arrested in possession of a firearm in East Boston Park, a location where numerous MS-13 gang members have been observed and where gang-on-gang violence frequently occurs. Hercules unlawfully entered the United States in 2014 as an unaccompanied minor. In April of 2015, an immigration judge deported him in absentia. Remember what I said about them turning up for these court dates? They don't. So now, because he's a Salvadoran national and pleading guilty, after being indicted, he's scheduled for sentencing on January 17th of 2019. So guess who's housing, feeding him, clothing him in between now and then? Taxpayers. He was in possession of the loaded gun. The charge of being an alien in possession of a firearm and ammunition provides for a sentence of no greater than 10 years in prison, 3 years of supervised release, more dollars, and a fine of $250,000. He also faces deportation upon completion of the sentence, whether he gets 1 year or 10. They will actually impose the sentence, the federal district court judge will, based on the U.S. sentencing guidelines and other statutory factors that have to do with the case. They list off a number of people who were involved in adjudicating the matter, which the list is so long, we're talking about probably $1 million we've spent on legal fees and court fees and things like that, court-appointed attorney, all this stuff for a guy who came here illegally and should have been turned around at the border. At 15, he should have been turned around at the border and told to go back home. He never should have been allowed in this country. Now he's come into the country and learned how to be a professional criminal, and we'll be taking care of him for up to 10 years in federal prison and then deporting him again, where he will probably join a caravan and re-enter the country to violently reoffend. And what about this situation am I supposed to be so emotional about? What about that situation lends me to believe that these individuals who have basically declared that they're going to enter this country whether we want them to or not, and they're marching on America, what about that situation I just described to you makes the situation with the caravan, the horde of invaders, what makes that sound any better? When we know MS-13 is embedded in that group, and also people from Bangladesh, and also probably disenfranchised ISIS fighters, just looking for a new place to be at home and do some terror. I just wonder where the grown-ups have gone. Where are they? Please come out again. Don't leave us out here by ourselves. Grown-ups, return to the discussion. And especially you grown-ups in government, it's time to, as Lindsey Graham has done, throw off the beasts of old and come out with common sense. Good night from the Heartland. If you're sticking with us, onenewsnow.com is up next.
Urban Family Talk.
Always stay up to date with the latest in the culture war from the news team of One News Now. Use the One News Now mobile app. It neatly categorizes news and articles from the One News Now website in an easy-to-find format. You can read the stories, watch videos, and conveniently share any news story. It's now available for download from your phone's app store.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. A student opened fire at Butler High School in Matthews, North Carolina today following a suspected fight between students. One parent who has 2 children at the school found out from her daughter, who borrowed another student's cell phone to call home. The mother was sent to a local church off-site where children were being sent for dismissal.
We can't go to the movies. We can't go to school. You can't go worship. Like, it's just, it's nowhere is safe. It's sad. It is. So my prayers to everybody involved.
The victim, also a student, died in the attack after being transported to the hospital. Police have the shooter and the weapon. Open enrollment for Obamacare begins this Thursday for anyone wanting or needing health insurance next year. Chris Woodward has more on what consumers can expect to find on healthcare.gov.
One of the frequent criticisms we've heard over the years is that premiums and deductibles are high, while many Obamacare plans involve narrow networks of doctors and hospitals that will actually take the insurance. Doug Badger of the Heritage Foundation says preliminary indications are that prices are not going up as much as they have in years past.
That's the good news. The bad news is the premiums are already so high that millions of people who don't qualify for subsidies already have dropped coverage. But as far as we know, we won't see a whole lot of sticker shock with double-digit increases, at least not to the extent that we've seen in previous years.
Of course, that's based on national averages, and premiums are going to vary from state to state and even within states.
So some people probably will see some big increases, but we don't expect it to be as bad or as widespread as what we've become accustomed to.
For people that do not want to go on healthcare.gov or an existing state exchange website that connects to the federal hub, healthcare sharing ministries are once again an option for consumers. Meanwhile, the Trump administration has loosened federal rules with respect to short-term limited duration policies.
It's something for people to think about as we move into this open season that begins on November 1.
I'm Chris Woodward.
A political scientist and election analyst says the people of Minnesota are clearly becoming more disenchanted with Democrat Keith Ellison in his bid to become Minnesota's Attorney General.
A new NPR News Star Tribune Minnesota poll showed that Republican Doug Wardlow has moved 7 points ahead of Ellison in the race for Minnesota AG. And this lead comes despite the fact that 56% of those polled said they don't recognize Wardlow's name. 8 in 10 voters recognized Ellison's name, but more said they had an unfavorable opinion of him than Wardlow. Ellison has been dogged by allegations of sexual assault by an ex-girlfriend. Dr. Charles Dunn of Clemson University says the chickens have come home to roost for Ellison.
The effort made by the Democratic Party to cover for his indiscretions was substantial, but in the end could not keep him from facing the truth of what he had done, and especially in light of the false efforts made to undo Justice Kavanaugh.
And Dunn thinks we can conclude a couple of things if Ellison loses.
Republicans stand to benefit from issues like this, namely indiscreet behavior by officials. Republicans have done a better job of cleaning house, especially in the Congress, than Democrats have. So I think that the handwriting on the wall indicates that Democrats have yet another problem to overcome in trying to regain their footing in competition with Republicans.
In September, Ellison had a 5-point lead over Wardlow. I'm Chad Groening.
The FBI says its bomb squad in Atlanta is responding to a suspicious package at the U.S. Postal Service in downtown Atlanta. Spokesman Kevin Rowson said via email that the agency had been notified by the U.S. Postal Inspection Service of a suspicious package that arrived at 400 Pryor Street in downtown Atlanta. And that's American Family News for this hour. Available online at onenewsnow.com, on Facebook and Twitter, and download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
And this is where I often say that the Word of God is not meant merely to be consumed. The question is not how many scripture you can retain. The question is how much scripture can you use.
I thoroughly enjoy the Hamilton Corner. It's a bright light, just priceless information, and God's Word is so needed.
Tune in to the Hamilton Corner, weekday afternoons at 5 Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hate does not know religion, race, creed, political party. It's not a political issue in any way, shape, or form. It wasn't just an attack upon the Jewish community. This was an attack upon America.
They've been going since October 13th. There's a lot of coughing here. They've got blisters on their feet. It's been tough, but they say that they're not accepting Mexico's offer for temporary asylum, temporary jobs, temporary health care, and they're definitely not heeding President Trump's warnings to not show up at the border. They all say they're coming, and they're going to show up on the border.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Welcome back to the program, Hour 2. This hour we're going to be discussing quite a lot. We're going to have much kind of digging in on a few issues that are really, I just feel, you know, I'm not gonna preview it. We're gonna go right into it. I want to get to this story of Detroit police removing 63 infant remains from Perry Funeral Home in Detroit. It's number 2.
Police have found 63 fetuses in total so far. 37 found in among 3 unrefrigerated cardboard boxes and 27 others found in freezers, all improperly stored, according to police. Tonight, I spoke with a mother who had a stillborn cremated here and has serious concerns with today's latest discovery.
I think about it every day. It's not one day I don't think about it.
Devisha Delahue says on May 23rd of 2017, she gave birth to a little girl, Deanna Michelle. But Deanna Michelle was a stillborn. Delahue says she came here to Perry Funeral Home to have her cremated. But when she got the ashes, she felt like something was wrong.
When I got them, I opened them up, and then instantly I just told my sister, my mom, say, this is not her. You know, I don't feel like this is my daughter.
Tonight, news of 37 infants and fetuses found in unrefrigerated unrefrigerated cardboard boxes, and an additional 27 found in a freezer is breaking Delahue's heart. She worries the ashes that she got may not be her daughter's.
I paid money for my daughter. I want her, and that's like sentimental to me. And just to have nothing, it could just be just plain ash. It's not even my daughter. It's heartbreaking to know that people are out here doing sick things like that.
So this story is percolating up through the media. You won't see it on CNN or MSNBC because this goes to a devaluation of life that we're seeing across the country. This is the second funeral home in Detroit that has been found to have remains of what they call fetuses and then infants. The difference between a fetus and an infant, you might be wondering. Well, one is the Latin word fetus, and when you look for its translation, first of all, it can be spelled fetus, F-E-T-U-S, or F-O-E-T-U-S, and they describe it as the prenatal stage between the embryonic stage and birth. But it's just another word for baby. Now, okay. Unborn offspring of a mammal, in particular an unborn human baby more than 8 weeks after conception. It's a baby. So the reason why the reporter had to make the designation that some of the boxes that were unrefrigerated contained fetuses and other of the boxes contained infants, she's just talking about the stage of development that the human remains were in. So I want to clear that up first. Second of all, this story coming on the heels of the Gosnell movie. I know the Gosnell movie's been out for a couple weeks now, but I just saw it over the weekend. And if you missed my conversation about that at the very top of the show in hour one, I was just struck by how well they were able to show the inconsistencies in people who claim to believe in science, yet don't believe that abortion clinics should be inspected. Because if you inspected clinics regularly, you would find conditions that are appalling, that fly in the face of what Americans were told back when the Supreme Court enshrined the right to kill an unborn baby as a constitutional one. They said that safe, legal, and rare would prevent women from catching STDs during abortion procedures by doctors using, implements over and over and over again and not cleaning them, by doctors using, single-use implements repeatedly, from doctors cutting corners, from doctors treating women like, experimental test tube animals, which all of these things Dr. Gosnell did. And, I subscribe to the, well, first of all, where there's smoke, there's fire. And Gosnell wasn't just smoke. It was a flaming, blazing city fire in Philadelphia. But there's more to it than that. Because just like you don't say, you see your dog scratching and you examine them and you see a flea, you don't say, oh my, you have a flea. No, you say you have fleas, because if you can see one, there are many others. And if we can see one clinic operating the way Gosnell's did, with 14 and 15-year-old girls administering anesthesia and medication, and a woman dying there, then there are other clinics like that. And if you can see a Republican governor saying, we're not going to inspect these abortion clinics because we don't want them to lose their license because that would be bad for the abortion industry, and he was a Republican, then there are Democratic governors who've said the same thing. We're not going to inspect these clinics. We're going to hold these clinics to a certain standard because that would mean they might have to shut down. Planned Parenthood has said as much in their own defense of not having clinic standards. They've said these clinic standards are an attempt to force abortion clinics to close. So they don't even pretend that they can meet the standards or that they want to. They simply say, you're trying to shut us down. What is the implication there? It's a tacit admission that clean clinics with staff who are trained and willing to do the different parts of the procedure according to medical standards are not something they're interested in, not even something they're able to do. And remember, Planned Parenthood does 1/3 of the abortions in this country. 1/3. So 2/3 of the abortions are done at clinics that could or could not be like Gosnell's. So here's the remainder of that audio. It's Perry Funeral Home 2.
The Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, or LARA, says some of the bodies date back to 2015. They have suspended the license of Gary Deek, the director of Perry Funeral Home. On top of today's gruesome find, LARA says Perry failed to certify death certificates, failed to secure permits for removal of dead bodies, and embalmed dead fetuses and infants without being told by a relative of the deceased to do so. Others in the community hope this raid at Perry Funeral Home and last week's discovery at Cantrell Funeral Home will send a message to other funeral homes in our area not taking care of precious loved ones.
And we're talking about a huge number of these babies who were not properly cared for after their demise. And so you might say, well, what does this have to do with abortion? Well, what would dehumanize babies to the point in the minds of these funeral home people? What would dehumanize the babies to the point where they didn't feel like they needed to do anything with them? They only needed to take care of the adults. We're not talking about a mass of adult remains that have been left unstored. It's the babies. They're the ones who have been not taken care of. And so as horrifying as that story is, there is a bit of good news. There's a story here. It's actually a survey that was just taken. Ligonier Ministries and Lifeway Research teamed up for the 2018 State of Theology Survey. It measures theological temperature of the United States to help Christians better understand today's culture and equip the church with better insights. Now, this survey found that 52%, which is a majority, of American adults now consider abortion a sin, up from 49% 2 years ago. Now, it's a good start. Considering it a sin is a great start. What we need is for Americans to view it as something that's unconscionable. Because you know what else is a sin? Gossiping. I don't know a lot of people who consider gossip to be something that can eternally separate you from God. Any unrepented sin can eternally separate you from God, but most people don't equate the sin of gossip as something that is that serious. All sin is serious to God, but I'm talking about the way people view it. When Americans say that they consider abortion a sin, you kind of have to go a little further than that and say, well, if it's a sin, is it something that eternally separates you from God? Do you see it as something that not only angers God, but that he would pour his wrath out on a nation that funds abortion with taxpayer dollars and forces all Americans to participate in it? And I wonder what the answer to that question would be. If I ever commission a survey, that would be one of the questions that I would ask. So it's important for us to note that the abortion rate is declining, the teen pregnancy rate is declining, and these are great developments. But we must, absolutely must, be as specific as we can in condemning abortion and getting Americans to understand that we receive the recompense for the sin of the nation immediately. So the idea that we have some grace period in which we can abort 55 to 60 million babies and not receive any recompense for that, that is not the way that God has a nation set up to operate. We receive the blessings when they're due for things that we've done that please God, for obedience, and we receive the recompense for the sin in due time. Now, there's also the wrath of God, which gets poured out on a nation that continues on in sin and becomes reprobate. That comes a little later when the full wrath is poured out, but God gives a certain number of years for a nation to come to their senses and repent and turn away from the sin. And that's what the abortion movement, the pro-life movement that fights the abortion movement is really about. It's about educating people and getting them to understand that what we're doing in this country is wrong. And wrong as a matter of public policy first, but wrong, period, when you're participating in it. And that women, so many women are being duped into thinking that this is just something that will solve a problem for you, when really the abortion is the first act cementing the problem in your life forever, because then you can't undo it. You can have a baby and give the baby up for adoption, or, you know, have a family member raise the baby, and you don't have the same repercussions that a woman who decides to have an abortion has. And so when people say to young girls and women or married women who have an unexpected pregnancy, well, if you have the abortion, it totally takes care of the problem. You get to walk away and you never have to think about it again. That's a lie from the pit of hell. It's a lie that Satan peddles to women. And then afterwards, when they realize what has happened and what they're going to have to live with, that's when the problems begin. So it's important to note when we're having some victory in an area, but we have so much further to go. So that's that. That's the theological survey. So the other thing, and I knew we mentioned it at the beginning of the show, but I want to talk a little bit about how the leftist media is kind of turning the entire situation with the most recent acts of violence that have been committed into indictments of Donald Trump. And you've got the media actually out there hyping these Jewish leaders, quote unquote, who've disinvited Trump from Pittsburgh. Now, first of all, President of the United States, he's flowing on Air Force One. Exactly how do they expect to keep him out of Pittsburgh? Does Pittsburgh have its own National Guard? I mean, what exactly do they think they're doing? It's so childish, it defies logic, yet here they are. Now, of course, the mainstream media think this is just fantastic. Jews reject Trump. Hashtag, we've seen this before. Bend the arc, Jewish action. We've seen this before.org. Have they got those signs printed up pretty quick, didn't they? So these so-called Jewish leaders are being amplified by far left media, mainstream media as well, that in their claims that local Jewish media doesn't want Trump to visit Pittsburgh. And that's not true, because the actual leader of the synagogue that was the site of the shooting, he said they welcome the president to come. They're happy to have him come. The Jewish leaders in question that are being touted by media are members of a far-left group called Bend the Arc, a Jewish partnership for justice. They are a part of the so-called resistance to President Trump. They're committed to electing Democrats to Congress and interrupting the Trump presidency. They directly blame Donald Trump for the violence that occurred at their synagogue. They don't blame Bernie Sanders for Steve Scalise and others being shot in Arlington, Virginia, but they blame Donald Trump for this. It's so pathetic. I'm sorry. It really is. All right. So when we get back, we're going to be talking about the immigration law and also the death threats and vandalism and assaults. 40 acts of left-wing thuggery. You'll want that list. Stay there.
Are you still stuck on the healthcare roller coaster? Still paying those high premiums? And strapped into huge deductibles? Not knowing what's around the next turn? Well, then let me tell you about a sound, sensible healthcare choice that really is affordable. It's MediShare, the healthcare sharing solution people like you have been trusting in for more than 25 years. MediShare members report saving around $500 a month on their healthcare costs, and they never pay for things they don't believe in. Time to say goodbye to that healthcare roller coaster and say hello to MediShare.
Call ** 345 to find out how much you can save on your healthcare. MediShare. Call ** 345. Message and data rates may apply. That's ** 345.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
You know, in a speech at Hillsdale College, Andrew McCarthy told the story of leading the prosecution in 1993 of the terrorist cell that bombed the World Trade Center. At the time, other government officials told him that he should read nothing into the fact that all the men in the terrorist cell were Muslims. These officials explained that the terrorist actions weren't representative of Islam because, after all, it is a religion that encourages peace. The government also portrayed the leader of the terrorist cell, Omar Abdel-Rahman, as a wanton killer and unbalanced lunatic. Andrew McCarthy discovered he was anything but. He was a globally renowned scholar with a doctorate in Islamic jurisprudence from a major university in Egypt. That presented a problem. Andrew McCarthy needed to know enough about Islamic interpretation to press the case. He hoped to find inconsistency between what the Quran teaches and what the leader of the terrorist cell taught. What he found was alarming. Every time Omar Abdel-Rahman quoted the Quran or other Islamic sources, he quoted them accurately. When he said that scriptures command Muslims to strike terror into the hearts of Islam's enemies, the scriptures backed him up. When he said Allah enjoined all Muslims to wage war until Islamic law was established throughout the world, the scriptures backed him up. Andrew McCarthy discovered the flaw in the oft-repeated argument that Muslim terrorists are perverting the religion of Islam. They are accurately quoting verses from the Quran. That doesn't mean that all Muslims will be terrorists. Many do not even know of these passages or have been able to contextualize them. But it does illustrate why we cannot continually argue that radical Muslims who are calling for jihad are teaching something that is contrary to Islam. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From Graceworks Pictures, Indivisible, based on the true story of Army Chaplain Darren Turner and his wife Heather. Rated PG-13. Now playing. IndivisibleMovie.com.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
I completely agree with the President. We need to change the laws. We have to close these loopholes. We need better barriers. There's no doubt about it. But the fact of the matter is we reward people for coming to this country illegally, because if they get in here, they're able to stay. And listen, as troublesome as these caravans are, the fact of the matter is, Maria, on an average day last year, 1,400 individuals came to this country illegally between the borders. Another 500 presented themselves at the points of port of entries. And again, we're having to deal with these folks. And the broken legal immigration system we have right now is prompting this. So we have lengthened adjudication process. We have an almost unending appeals process. And, of course, one of the ways we're handling this backlog of cases is we just simply grant administrative closures to the tune of close to 900 per day last year, although Attorney General Sessions stopped that administrative closures.
Hey, welcome back to the program. If you want to call and join in on the show, comment on anything we've discussed in Hour 1 or Hour 2, you're welcome to do so. The call lines are open at 866-963-2037. 866-963-2037. Love to chat with you if you want. Now I want to talk about Brian Kemp. He's talking about his immigration plan and saying that, you know, if he's elected, he will track and deport criminal illegals. Now, this is super important, okay, because Stacey Abrams is running against him, and I believe that her position is the opposite of that. But more importantly, we're to be voting based on what God's word says. And if you're one of those people who's, oh, God's word doesn't say deport illegal immigrants. No, but it does say prosecute lawbreakers. And it's a very simple concept, sovereignty of nations. It was given to us in the Bible, and it is God's plan for people groups to form up into countries and nations and to have borders. And so, you know, there's really no getting around that. And knowing that means you don't have to feel guilty about wanting the law to be followed. So you got Georgia Republican gubernatorial nominee Brian Kemp joining Breitbart News Radio on Saturday to discuss his opposition to his challenger's radical socialist agenda. Now, he's running against Stacey Abrams. She has embraced socialism. She wants to give illegal aliens voting privileges. And the quote from him is, I don't know if I can explain it. It's against the Constitution and obviously against state law. Certainly as a Secretary of State, I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen. It's funny, the lawsuit they proposed or served us with was asking for that. We pointed it out to them. They amended the complaint not to ask for that. So now they're suing us over something we already do. It's just gotten ridiculous down here in Georgia. And so this is kind of a hallmark. It's like a little ringing of the bell. Will Georgia continue to be a prosperous state that does really well, you know, with their flagship city, Atlanta, with that outsized population and just tons of growth? Will they continue on like that, or are they going to go down the path of socialism and, you know, sanctuary city status and all of that garbage? Same thing with Florida, where you see two radically oppositional views on display in their gubernatorial contest. Someone who will need to raise $2.6 billion in taxes a year on Floridians, Gillum, his plans for socialism will cost $2.6 billion a year. And think of all the wealthy, kind of liberal types, moderate Democrats, hardcore Democrats, who've moved to Florida for good weather and relief from, you know, the toughness of New York, lower taxes, economic prosperity, and a great place to live out their retirement years, they'll be facing the same things they faced back in New York. They'll be facing them again, only they'll be in Florida. And where will they go? Well, they'll take their locust-like behavior over to Texas, probably. Got a ton of Californians moving into Texas with their locust-like behavior. And I get why a lot of them are leaving, because they've realized the error of their voting patterns. But some of them are just moving because they're like, this is too expensive. We need to go someplace that's still warm, but is cheaper. And as soon as they get there, they start listening to the socialists, listening to hey, we need more tax revenue. We need more. No, you don't. You don't need more tax revenue. You need smaller government, less tax coming out of your purse and into the government. You need less of it. So now let's talk about these death threats and thuggery. I'm just going to give you a few of them, and then I'll post the link. I'm just so upsetting to see this and to see it not covered in the media. And I understand there's an agenda, but there's also an issue of calling people out who, I mean, doesn't anyone who is on the left kind of care about looking bad? That's like a question that I'd love to ask. Do you care that this makes you look bad? And instead of trying to cover it up, don't you think you should call these people out so they can stop making you look bad? So we're talking about so far in October, and we're coming to the end of October, but so far in October, on October 3rd, you had ricin and a threatening letter sent to President Trump. Defense Secretary James Mattis and Director Wray were sent ricin letters. The New York Times openly fantasized about President Trump's assassination on October 25th. On the 18th, an MSNBC commentator called for the military to remove Trump from office. On October 16th, a person claimed a ricin letter was in a letter sent to Senator Collins's home. No fewer than 5 Republican campaign centers and a club have been vandalized. This is October. October 2nd, the Illinois GOP headquarters was hit with rape graffiti. The 25th, GOP headquarters vandalized in Iowa City. October 23rd, boulder thrown through Representative McCarthy's office window in California. Again, 2 on the 12th, GOP offices vandalized in Mesa, Arizona. Antifa smashing windows and defacing doors at the Metropolitan Republican Club in Manhattan. Rape and death threats. You're thinking there haven't been any of those? They never disappoint, these hardcore leftists. October 24th, 19th, 2nd, 16th, 8th, 15th, 7th, 4th, 8th, and 6th. Lots of senators received lots of rape threats for not just themselves, but their children. And a lot of those were over the Kavanaugh vote. And that, just so you know, the papers you hear me rattling are front and back. I got front and back for all this stuff. 9 assaults and attempted assaults against Republicans. So a Soros-funded group sent one of their operatives out, and he battered Nevada GOP candidate's campaign manager. An elderly Trump supporter was beaten up by Kavanaugh protesters. Some other protesters chased Senator Lindsey Graham to his car, saying that they would physically remove him from office. Andy Harris was assaulted by protesters. He's a GOP congressman. Susan Rice's Republican son was assaulted at a pro-Kavanaugh event. He attends Stanford University, and he's the president of the Republican club there. And then a left-wing comedian got physical with a Trump supporter at a Hooters. Republican candidate Shane Meckland punched in a Minnesota restaurant. Sarah Anderson, who's a Republican state rep, was assaulted in Minnesota. Justin Fareed's campaign canvasser was allegedly chased and assaulted. There have been 6 acts of harassment and open calls to harass Republicans. A left-wing mob disrupted Marsha Blackburn's rally. McConnell and his wife, we've covered this on the show, were, told to get out of here at a diner. The fellow diners fought back and stopped that. Portland Antifa told the 9/11 NYPD widow, "Your husband should rot in the grave. I'm leaving out the expletives." And that one is actually really cool if you go to the Right Scoop. And I don't mean it's really cool that he did that, but some people in the crowd decided to get him back. And at the first sign of pushback from a grown man, because he was yelling at a woman who was shorter than him and clearly couldn't defend herself against him. But when a man claiming to be her son came running after him and said, "Now who are you going to yell at?" he looked terrified and turned and ran across the street and started running for his life with his little Antifa backpack. You can find that at the Right Scoop. Professor calls for harassing Republicans at restaurants. He said, "Stick your fingers in their salads." Oh, isn't that disgusting? Ugh. I don't want to be like, ugh, ugh. October 8th, 2018, left-wing terrorist group calls Antifa, calls to take over Portland. They actually took over the intersection there, harassed an old guy who was like just trying to drive through. Senator Rand Paul was harassed at the airport on October 6th. October 1, Senator Mitch McConnell was badgered at the airport by the anti-Kavanaugh activists. He's so funny because he's really quiet when this stuff goes on. And he just seems to kind of like sit there and observe it. And then when they don't get their way, he kind of smiles. He like smirks a little bit. I just wonder what he's really like when he's not Senator Mitch McConnell and he's just sitting around at home with his wife or sitting with friends. I bet you he's a hoot. Honestly, I think he's that person who he's always quiet around you and he's always serious. But then when you catch him off guard, you're having like a blast. I know he's older, but I'm just guesstimating by the smirks he lets off when these people are attacking him. They don't actually ruffle his feathers. His wife gets pretty ticked off, though, and she goes after him. She's not afraid of anybody, which is interesting because she's very petite. 3 high-ranking Democrats have called for more violence and incivility. Obama's former Deputy Secretary of State, Philippe Rines, said harassment of McConnell and his wife is fine. Hillary Clinton opposed civility with Republicans. We played that audio here. Eric Holder told the Dem activists, "When they go low, we kick them." CNN called for harassment of Republicans. CNN said mobs have a constitutional right to chase Republicans out of restaurants. No, they don't. Protest is peaceful assembly. It is not chasing people out of places. I'm just waiting for the day when somebody chases the wrong person. Just waiting, because it's bound to happen. Governor Cuomo blamed the GOP for the Antifa attack I mentioned a little bit ago on the Manhattan Club. A left-wing news outlet blamed Republican Steve Scalise for nearly being murdered. This was the Raw story on October 8th, said Stephen Scalise was an accomplice in his own attempted murder. A Trump supporter's truck was lit on fire. It had Trump 2020 bumper stickers, and it was left out, parked, and someone set it on fire. Because definitely, if you disagree with ideas, you should burn them to the ground. That's sarcasm, folks, but I don't have to worry about people in this audience actually doing stuff like this because we have sense. And that's what we're dealing with here, a lack of common sense. We have a few minutes left in this segment if you want to call now or for the next segment. The call lines are open. We have them open at 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. I want to turn to the Second Amendment. There's this story out of, let me see, I want to give you the correct city, Birmingham, Alabama. So WBRC is reporting that police have confirmed 1 person is dead and 2 people are injured after a shooting late Saturday night. The shooting took place at the McDonald's across from the Princeton Hospital. A masked man entered the restaurant when an employee opened the door for a father and his sons to leave. The masked man then opened fire in the restaurant. At that point, the father began shooting at the masked man. Both the father and the masked man were struck along with one of the children. Police later confirmed that the masked man is now deceased, and the father had non-life-threatening injuries. A minor also had non-life-threatening injuries. Authorities do not know at this time if the masked man was robbing the store or targeting an employee who worked there. Police indicate that the father will not be facing charges at this time, and they're asking that anyone who has information pertaining to the case contact the homicide unit or Crime Stoppers, 254-777. They don't give the area code, but I'm assuming if you're local to Birmingham, Alabama, you know who to call. This is Good Guy with a Gun Stops Mass Murderer. It should be on every single station. It should be trumpeted from every single outlet that this man came into this McDonald's and he was going to kill everyone. And this dad who was exiting providentially in the right spot at the right time with his firearm ready to go stopped the mass murderer. How could it get better than that? And I've written extensively for America's First Freedom. I did a couple of columns about good guy with a gun stops this, and that. And they have a regular segment in their print magazine for that comes out every month, where at the very beginning, they list all of the good guy with the gun type stuff that happens across the country. Millions and millions and millions of times. Never reported in the media, because nobody wants you to think that, your own defense could be something that you could take care of yourself. And God bless the police and first responders, and we do rely on them heavily, and it's so good to have them. But in that moment, when he opened the door for his kids to leave and the gunman slips in and starts shooting, he could duck out because he's got 2 kids and try to get away, or he could turn around and put that assailant in the ground, which is what he did. And there's nothing wrong with that. The Bible mandates that we not only defend ourselves, but that we have an obligation, if we have the ability to, protect other people from hurt, harm, and danger when they encounter it and we have the ability to stop it. There's nothing better than that, in my opinion. It is exactly what we were supposed to do, and I'm so glad to be able to share this story with you. And I will quickly just toss it over to the Facebook page so that you can see it there. If you want to share it, hit the share button and let other people know that, look, it not only happens, it happens a lot. And it's fortunate for us that we have the responsibility and the right of being armed and being able to own firearms, unlike people in other countries where they don't have that ability. Just fantastic. It's really fantastic. And I feel like the other part of the story here is that it wasn't an accident that this dad was the one who was leaving out of the store and it happening the way that it did. And it doesn't say that other people were shot. So I believe if other people were shot, they would have mentioned that in the story. So that means he prevented all of those people from, they're just sitting in a restaurant. You imagine it. If you eat out at all, and almost all Americans eat out at some point. You're sitting at a McDonald's or, whatever your favorite place to eat is. You're just sitting there, mind your own business. Some guy comes in and starts shooting, and the majority of the people there are not going to be armed. And the guy who opened the door to leave, that the guy passes on his way in, is the one who has the firearm and shoots him and saves everybody else. He shot himself, but non-life-threatening. God bless him. God bless him and his family. All right, last segment of the show is coming up next. You stay right there. We'll be right back.
My father, your great-grandfather, fought in World War II.
Really?
He was a gunner on the big ship out in the Pacific Ocean.
Wow.
Your great-grandmother did her part, too.
Was she on a ship?
Oh, no. She stayed back home. She and a lot of her friends worked really hard in a factory because the men had gone off to war.
Ooh.
And they held scrap metal drives to help in the war effort. The folks back home were heroes, too.
Here at the American Family Association, we consider you the heroes back home. As you fulfill your responsibility of caring for your family day to day, your partnership with us is crucial as we fight the enemies of freedom in America. Thank you for your commitment to the American Family Association.
Grandpa, what's a scrap metal drive?
Let's get some cookies, and I'll tell you all about it.
This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. Blount County School District Superintendent Rodney Green caved to the Freedom from Religion jihadis' complaint about student-led prayer at football games, and parents immediately fought back. Students were using the school's public announcement system to broadcast the short prayer, and the Freedom from Fun folks felt that made it an endorsement. Instead of consulting parents, the decision was made after consulting attorneys. At the next game, aggravated moms and dads stood and said the Lord's Prayer in unison without the assistance of a PA system. The next week, the spirit of capitalism took over, and the parents made T-shirts with the Lord's Prayer on them and sold those at a breakneck pace. And the shirts are cute, stylish even. 2 takeaways here. First off, if taxpayers pay your salary, consult with them before making huge changes, especially if prompted by the Freedom from Fun people. Secondly, and ultimately, it's up to us to keep our religious freedom. Don't forget it. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at StaceyOnTheRight.com.
Donald Trump's America.
Pittsburgh's a strong town.
A new week begins after one filled with threats and tragedy. In Pittsburgh, the victims of the deadly synagogue shooting were remembered. Mayor Bill Peduto spoke directly to grieving family and friends.
We're here as a community of one for you. We will be here to help you through this horrific episode.
This tragedy just a day following the arrest of a man in Florida who police believe is responsible for sending package bombs to prominent Democrats. Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen on Fox News Sunday says using free speech to hurt people will not be tolerated.
There is no place for hate in this country. Hate is hate. Violence is violence.
America is dealing with these events as an important midterm election approaches. Secretary Nielsen says the goal a week from tomorrow
to assure Americans that their votes will count and their votes will be counted correctly.
Majorities in the House and the Senate hang in the balance. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Welcome back to Stacey on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
I want to hold up again this front page from yesterday of the Washington Post because I got to say I was really shocked by it. I fully expected it to say suspect arrested, and instead it said bomb suspect outspoken supporter of Trump. That's the headline on the Washington Post. And I went back and looked at the Post from last year after a Bernie Sanders supporter attacked a Republican baseball practice and severely wounded Steve Scalise. No headline there about outspoken supporter of Sanders.
Isn't that fantastic? Little double standard going on there. When the Bernie Sanders bro, the Bernie bro, shot up the Republicans, he actually asked, before he started shooting, he said, "Are these congressional Republicans, only Republicans?" And he said, "Yeah, these are congressional Republicans. They're practicing for the baseball game that's coming up." He goes out there, pulls his gun out, starts shooting. He wanted to make sure that he was going to get Republicans. And then you look on his social media, he loves Bernie Sanders. He's clearly a Democrat. He is not he's not on the right. Now, if the person doing the damage is a Republican, that's the first thing they say. Deranged Republican, Republican shooter, things like that. Republican bomber, attempted terrorist Republican, something like that. But when it's a Democrat, they bury the fact that it's a Democrat way down in like the second to the last paragraph from the end. They just leave that out. Now, if you don't want to know that it's a Democrat, it's not going to matter where they put it because you're going to ignore it. But for Americans who are just looking for news and information, why can't they just tell the truth about it? So Chris Wallace called him out. Thank God, that he actually put that out there. But they weren't done. You've got this rabbi of the Tree of Life Synagogue, and he's on with, I believe it was Allison Camerata on CNN, and she wanted him to blame Donald Trump for the shooting, and he was so eloquent, a wise individual in his answer. Here he is in number 6.
If we look in the Bible after the story of the flood and Noah, God regretfully says to Noah, I have learned that man from his youth is prone to evil, which is, you would think, a horrific thing for God to tell us. The message I get from that is, yes, there is the possibility of hate in all people, but there's also the possibility of good. And good will always win out over hate if we let it in each of us. And I have seen so much good these past 2 days, the emails, the texts. When I went home last night, I think I finally cleared out from my phone all my emails. I woke up this morning, I had 399 emails. These are strangers, people I've never met from around the world. Jew, Christian, Muslim, Sikh, every religion, people just pouring out their hearts and giving support. And it shows me good will always win out over evil.
And I was really happy to hear from him that he had a message that he wanted to convey, and he wasn't going to allow this questioning, this leading questioning, to change what he had to say. He wasn't going to allow partisanship to enter into what was going on. It's a time to grieve and mourn the loss of these wonderful people who were gunned down. They weren't in the commission of a crime. They weren't doing anything wrong. They were just in their place of worship. It's a time to honor their lives. And, you know, one of my pet peeves in this whole thing is this praying to people. We're praying to this one, praying to that one. We only pray to God, but we pray for other people. We pray for the victims of violence. We pray for people who maybe they're suffering the kind of sorrow where they can't pray for themselves. We intercede on their behalf by praying to God about their situation. I just want to kind of give an opportunity for that truth to be out there. So I know the Department of Homeland Security and U.S. Department of Defense, switching subjects, DOD, are holding a joint press conference on the Department of Defense deployment to the southwest border. And I am going to bring you as much information about that on tomorrow's show as I possibly can. But I want to give just, this isn't about hate. This isn't about not wanting people of color to immigrate into this country. We already have that going on. That's not the issue. The issue is that we have people who want to come here illegally and they don't care what our laws are. And we have to stand up against that. Don't misattribute or misinterpret what's being said. The truth is that any person from any country who decided to amass on one of our borders or come here by boat and just dump off, 10,000 people, we wouldn't put up with that. So the president and first lady are going to visit the synagogue in Pittsburgh, regardless of what these hardcore, activists have said they want. They will be there. The rabbi has had a tough time going through the actual building. They've gone back in. They're saying the sanctuary is no longer usable, which I would assume would be the case. And President Trump has come out swinging, saying that the media is to blame for the bloodshed. They've stoked a great anger and that they are the true enemy of the people. I am not one of those people who is inclined at this point to say that he shouldn't make comments like this. I'm actually tired of Republicans acting as if, the battered wife or enablers of this media assault on President Trump. 92% of the coverage of the president is negative. And media types don't have to do that. They could easily, in newsrooms, they could just say, it would be so simple, and it is the right thing to do, and it might hurt a little bit, but anything that you're willing to do that's right, that hurts a little bit in the beginning, is going to yield fantastic rewards. And if media types would say, you know what, he's right, 92% of the coverage that we give to him is negative, I'm going to assign 3 of the reporters in this newsroom of 30, I'm going to assign 3 of you to find positive news stories, and we're going to make sure and put those up as well. Not because we like him or we've changed our mind, we're still resisting him, but we are going to give him fair coverage because we don't want his accusations about us to be true. And I'm telling you, I know it sounds like, oh, Stacey, that's so pie in the sky. It may sound like that, but it is not in your own best interests as media organizations to basically pave the path for your own demise. As more and more Americans get frustrated with the coverage, they turn off these media outlets. That's why they're putting stuff behind paywalls. That's why we need you to do a membership. Give us your email and let's do a membership process for these because their print circulations are way down. So even if it's not about what's right and wrong, it should be about maintaining the business that they want to see continue to exist. Instead of laying off reporters, pick 3 or 5 reporters to find positive news stories about the Trump administration. And if he's really as bad as you think, that minimal amount of coverage of the good things he's doing isn't going to impact public opinion about him. In fact, it would just be that Jim Acosta, who's always whining about himself, that's what he was doing today at today's press conference. They had an on-camera press briefing from Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and he spent all 3 of his questions that she gave him peppering her and trying to force her to admit that CNN's not one of the enemies of the people, or maybe they are. Which specific news outlets does President Trump think are the enemy of the people? She refused to answer, which is her right. He wasted his questions. He could have asked so many other things that would have been momentous and provided some actual real news coverage for his organization. And that's what I'm talking about. He has got to be replaced. He's got to be replaced. They got to send somebody in there who asks some real questions. The other thing is they'll let any news and media person register and show up for a press briefing. And I have got to get myself to D.C. and have my turn to ask a question. I really do. It's on my list of things that I've got to absolutely go do. So in additional news, just in case you think your tax dollars are going, they're all just, the use is above board. You have this employee of the federal government. He infected government networks with Russian malware, according to the Inspector General's report, through watching pornography at work. Now you might think, well, how much pornography could he watch? Well, apparently he had a lot of time during the day. The report on this is from the Interior Department watchdog, and they recommended that the U.S. Geological Survey ratchet up their internet security protocols after discovering that their networks had been infected with malware. The malware came from pornography sites. They named it, they traced it to a single unnamed U.S. Geological Survey employee who reportedly used a government-issued computer to visit some 9,000 adult video sites, according to a report published on October 17th. Many of the prohibited pages were linked to Russian websites containing malware, which was ultimately downloaded to the employee's computer and used to infiltrate U.S. Geological Survey networks. The investigation found the employees saved much of the pornographic material on an unauthorized USB drive and personal Android cell phone, both of which were connected to their computer against agency protocols. The employee's cell phone was also infected with malware. The digital forensic examination revealed that the employee had an extensive history of visiting these sites that hosted the malware. When it was downloaded to the employee's government laptop, the malware exploited the USGS network. All of this behavior is prohibited. Yet, they haven't disabled the connections on government-issued devices which permit this to occur. It's not the first time this has happened on government property. Over the last 15 years, similar scandals have enveloped the EPA, Securities and Exchange Commission, and Internal Revenue Service. Last year, a D.C. area news network covered egregious on-the-job pornography viewing at a dozen federal agencies, and national security officials have reportedly found an unbelievable amount of child pornography on government devices. The problem is so prevalent that Representative Mark Meadows has introduced legislation banning pornography at federal agencies 3 different times. The question is, when does it get passed? It has not been passed. There are 2 versions of this bill. Reported in the House on April 6, 2017, H.R. 680, and H.R. 680 on the Union Calendar number 47. You can go to congress.gov and find these. It's H.R. 680, Eliminating Pornography from Agencies Act. It was introduced by Representative Mark Meadows, who's a Republican from North Carolina's 11th. The committees that he serves on are House and Oversight and Government Reform. It was placed on the Union Calendar on 4/6 of 2017. It has only been introduced. It has not passed the House. It has not passed the Senate. It has not gone to the President. It is not law. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, how could this be? How could it be that this bill would be introduced and has not yet become law? I don't know, because the use of pornography on government devices is so prevalent that nobody wants to pass a law banning it because then they would be affected themselves. There it is. That's the answer. So, yeah, that's depressing. Now, I also want to, as we close out the program today, I want to talk to you a little bit about all of these polls predicting that one party or the other is going to take back the House. If nobody votes, then the predictions of these little, pollsters and naysayers could possibly come true. If everyone votes, their predictions could come true. The fact is, they're predictions based on algorithms and research and what has happened in the past and yada, yada, yada. What happens if Americans humble themselves pray, repent, ask God to heal our land, and then get to the polls, well, something revolutionary could happen. We could actually get some really godly people in there to supplement ones we already have in there and replace some of those who shouldn't be there. And we could see some real change in government. Government's not the ultimate, but it is something important that we need to pay attention to as Christians. And so I encourage you to not give up. The polls don't mean anything. What means something is you praying over your ballot. You can print it out beforehand and review all of the issues that are going to be on your ticket for your area, for your taxing district, and then vote according to what God has laid out for us in his word. Any person who plans to or supports violating any one of the 10 commandments is not someone you should vote for and think you're going to get a pass for that by God when it's time to meet at the judgment seat. Now, last bit of news for today. I'm kind of shocked, but I'm so happy. It's good news. Angela Merkel will not seek re-election. After 16 years in government and driving Europe to its knees with her migrant assistance, she's finally going to let go after being smacked down in the most recent election. Fantastic news. So I'll have to read up on who could possibly replace her and see if she'll be better or worse. You know what? God bless you. I hope you have a restful and relaxing evening, and I want to see you back here tomorrow. God bless from the Heartland.